All right. Hello, everybody. Hey, it's Dan from Dan Stocks. How's everyone doing today? How's every? Blah, blah, blah. Well, it's live, so I can't go back. But how's everyone doing today? Hope you're all great. So let me just get the agenda I wanted to talk about. So last time I did a live stream was when we just hit 10,000 subs, which was back in June, about less than 2 months ago. And right now we're almost at 12,500. So the channel's grown roughly 25% since I've started doing since I spoke to you guys last time. So I just wanted to first I want to say how appreciative I am that everybody's tuning in, watching the content, engaging with it, and being entertained. It means a lot to me. So the last video that came out had a really positive response. Was about the Hawaiian Mafia, which was called The Company. I got that idea. I was on vacation in Hawaii a couple months ago. So that's when I was there. I was wondering, I'm like, I wonder what kind of, crime stuff happened here. This is a very unique place. And started doing some Googling and found it out. So that video also is the first time where I used something other than stock video and images. I actually went and took some what they call B-roll in Hawaii that we put into the video as well. So that's the first Dan's Docs video with original footage. Um, I think I've been getting a lot of comments on that video too about a guy named I think his name is Larry Mehu. I'm probably saying it wrong, but I how we should have also included him in that organized crime video. And apparently, I think from the little bit of research I did, I think the guy was a former cop who became a crime lord in Hawaii. So I think we will do a video about him sometime in the near future. I'm not exactly sure when yet because the big one I'm working right now is about it's another mafia video about the first and second Colombo War. Um, I'm doing them as one video, one conflict, rather than spread out as two separate ones because at the heart of the first two Colombo family wars, uh, the central character was Joe Gallo. It was Joe Gallo and his brothers who led a rebellion against Joe Profaci in 1961 is when the fighting broke out. And, that ended up finally ending when Joe Colombo became the new boss of the family and he made peace with Larry Gallo. But at the same time, Joe Gallo was in prison. And when he got out, his brother Larry had been dead for a few years. And Joe basically felt that, you know, the family owed him in a way that he should have been the boss of the family. I think, when he got out of jail, the Columbos offered him $1,000 to go away, and he demanded 100,000, which wasn't going to happen. And then he ended up killing. Well, they don't know if actually he ordered the killing or not, but Joe Colombo was assassinated, and after that, some fighting broke out. Joe Gallo was killed. Some of his own guys were. And it turned into a big conflict that finally ended when Carmine Persico took the reins of the family. So it's roughly about a 15-year conflict that we're working on. The one thing that I really found interesting when I'm doing the research for that video is the character of Joe Provaci. Because when I look at photos of him, he kind of looks like Ray Romano to me. He doesn't look like a very threatening guy. He doesn't look mean like some of these other mob guys do. And the truth was, like, he was actually incredibly vicious and incredibly business savvy. He the character of there's a lot of parallels between him and what ended up in the Godfather book. They took a lot of things. Mario Puzo took a lot of things from Provaci and put it in that book. One of them was that the Godfather had his olive oil business. Joe Provaci had that too, and the name of the company was called Mamma Mia, and it's still around today. And I think his family is actually still running it. It's a family run business, and I don't think they're involved in the mafia anymore, but that part of his legacy is still living on as well, which I found really interesting. Um, the thing about Pravaci too is that makes him different is he was one of the original members of the commission, but he's the only one who was like the actual founder of his family. Luciano, came up in the Masseria Morello gang. Gagliano, he came up under Gaetano Arena, who was actually a captain who broke away from the Morello family. Who else was there? Bonanno came up for the Castellammarise family. So Pravacci's the only one who actually went and started this family on his own. And a lot of the stuff about his life before the Castellammarise War is not really well documented. What we do know is that he was born in Sicily, and in 1897, he did about a year in prison in Sicily for theft. Um, he may or may not have had family that was in the mafia. It, he probably did. And then after he got out of prison around 1921, he came across the ocean to the United States. Apparently, Vincent Mangano, the future boss of the Gambino family, he was also on that boat as well. And I don't know if the two of them interacted, if they talked to each other, but Pravacci, it said he ended up in Chicago. According to his immigration paperwork, from what I read online, he was being sponsored by his cousins, which, back then, if you came to America legally as an immigrant, you had to have a family member say, "Hey, I'm his sponsor," because they didn't want people coming in here and going on welfare. Back then, the welfare programs were a lot more limited than what they are today. So apparently, a lot of these mob guys came over with their cousins sponsoring them, and a lot of people speculate that it's not really their cousins. It was actually other mafia people sponsoring them. So that could be the story with Pravacci. But Pravacci, he ended up in Chicago in 1921. That's where he went to first, and we don't really know anything about his time over there, if he was involved in crime or not. Um, I guess at the time it would be Johnny Torrio who was, running stuff there, but I don't, we don't know if Pravacci was part of that gang or not. All we know is that they say he opened a grocery store with a bakery, and the business ended up failing, and he went to Brooklyn in 1925. So after he went to Brooklyn, that's when he started the Mamma Mia company. And it's another thing too. Like, we don't really know if he was a legitimate businessman at first, or and then he got into crime, or if he was into crime and then he started his businesses as a cover. Because it's entirely possible that he might have seen what was going on in Prohibition and then decided to maybe put his hand in it too to make some extra money. I'm not sure. I mean, also, I would think too, the become the boss of a family that you started from scratch. You're not just dabbling in bootlegging or crime in general. You're probably all in on it. So yeah, that's we don't really know, but some of the facts we do know is there was another member of the Pravacci family named Charles Losiero. His actual name is Collegro Losiero, and from reading a story about when that guy got murdered in the 50s, they mentioned that he was arrested for murder in 1925, but the charges were dropped because of a lack of evidence. So it's entirely possible that you know Pravacci could have started his gang, which grew into his family back then, and Collegro was or Losiero was one of the early members in it, and that murder is part of the long lost story of how Joe Pravacci started his gang. Because the other thing too, like that's doesn't quite make sense when you're looking at Pravacci's story is Pravacci. I might have been saying the guy's name wrong, Pravacci. But when you're looking at his story, he back then in the 1920s, the gangster Frankie Yale, he was like the big guy in Southern Brooklyn. basically running his own, his own crew, his own, essentially a family out there up until, in 1928, he was murdered. The background for that was apparently he was, involved in bootlegging and a business partner with Al Capone. Al Capone was from Brooklyn. The two of them knew each other, and he was cheating Capone. So Capone sent some guys in, and they shot him up with Tommy guns on the street. I think that was also the first Tommy gun murder that happened in New York City as well. But so Profaci was working, operating in that area where Frankie Yale was the big guy. So I it's I couldn't really find much definitive information about what how that family formed exactly. But once Frankie Yale was killed, there was a lot of tensions in the mob world. So they held a national conference over in Cleveland in December of 1928 at the Statler Hotel. When they were there at the Statler Hotel, um, the place ended up getting raided, and actually that's when Profaci and also his underboss, who was his brother-in-law, Joe Magliocco, that's where they first got on law enforcement's radars. And when you look for younger photos of them, that's the photos you find as their mugshots. But anyway, before the meeting got raided, one of the orders of business was for the other families to officially recognize the Profaci family as its own independently recognized family. So um, yeah, so basically between 1925 and 1928, his family was operating under the radar, and it's I definitely would like to know more about it, but I just don't have the information. I don't know if somebody watches this, maybe you can respond in the comments if you know a place I can go to, or if you know the missing pages, or you can always shoot us an email too. But um after that, he's Profaci, and his criminal activities are a little bit more well known. I was looking through Joe Bonanno's book, Command of Honor, last night, and he mentioned in there that during the Castellammarese War, Profaci officially stayed neutral. Um, Bonanno said he was actually leaning towards the Maranzano faction, but Maranzano, wanted him to remain neutral, or at least feign neutrality, so that way he could be like a intermediary between the two rival groups. He can bring messages back and forth. Yeah, so that's and then after that, once Maranzano took over as the boss of bosses after Masseria died, Profaci was still had his spot at the top of his family. And then when Luciano ended up killing Maranzano and taking over, Profaci ended up having a seat on the commission. So yeah, there's not other than that, like, I mean, the rest of his story is well documented, that he was involved in drug dealing as well. um his company was actually involved. The Mamma Mia company was used for smuggling. There was an incident where he was importing oranges from Sicily, and during a customs inspection, they were suspicious because every single orange weighed the same. And when they opened it up, it turned out that the peels were actually made out of wax, and the inside was heroin, which he didn't get charged for. He claimed to not know how that got there, and they couldn't pursue anything else. But yeah, I mean, if anybody really knows more about this guy with his early days, I mean, the other stuff I know about him is you know during the mob's golden era of, like, the 30s and 40s, when a lot of these guys were still under the radar and not really fully well known by law enforcement. The Profaci family was thriving. um the administration they had with, it was him. His underboss was his brother-in-law, Joe Magliocco. His consigliere was his brother, Salvatore. um Apparently they have, like, the longest intact administration out of any family in history. They were going strong until 1954, when Salvatore died. And then and then Lo Sierra, that guy I mentioned before, Lo Sierra became consigliere, and then it stayed like that up until 1962 when Profaci died of liver cancer. Yeah, so that's the new video that's coming out, is going to be about the First and Second Colombo War as a combined overall conflict, highlighting Profaci's early days, how his family formed, and then how it transformed into the modern day Colombo family from that conflict, how it went from Profaci to Colombo to Persico. So yeah, please look out for that. I think I'm going to be releasing it on Friday. I'm still busy with the rough edit, but once usually these ones, when I get the images all in there, um, from that point, the polishing doesn't really take as much time. It's really the main thing that takes time with these videos is getting the images for them. And yeah, that's also part of the reason why a lot of people have been asking in comments about, because I've been using the AI voice to do the voiceover of these things. Um, I would, I understand that, my voice was, the voice that, is in most of the older videos. And, here I am right now talking to you guys, so you can see that I'm an actual person. Before I even did live streams and was using my voice, people were still calling it AI. But the reason I've been using the AI, I would like to have an AI in my own voice eventually, but the program I use, it always has an error when I do that. But the reason I use the AI is because mainly it's about speed. Um, it would take me, like, this Columbo video that's coming out is gonna be over 40 minutes long. It would take me a good, couple hours on a day just to record the audio for that. And then it would take even longer, maybe another 3 hours to go through it, cut it down. So it's about 4 or 5 hours of work versus I because all these scripts it's all scripted, it's all written out before, versus I just put it in the AI program, and it churns it out in 4 minutes. So it's like 4 hours of work now takes 4 minutes. So yeah, I like it because it allows me to, spend more time making more videos. So anybody here, I know we got a couple people watching. If anybody has something they want to say, any questions or anything, you can type it in right now. Let's see. Say hi. I'll give it like 30 seconds. And if nobody has anything they want to say, then I'm gonna end the live stream. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and hope everybody's enjoying their Sunday and the rest of the summer. And I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you. Bye.